Originally, this paper was intended as part of a general philosophy webinar, and it was meant to be one of 3 papers, with the first paper going to set the scene with what is the significance of Western logic in philosophy, the second paper progressing to ask what are the axioms and why are they important in philosophy, finally concluding with how can a priori and a posteriori methods be used to arrive at certitude. In preparing for today's paper, it was necessary to do some research on the first 2 topics, so I'll briefly cover them first. Hopefully, that will provide some contextual relevance. So let's start with that first question. What is the significance of Western logic in philosophy? So before bringing logic into the question, I had to go back to basics and ask the question, what is Western philosophy? Because I'm going to readily admit I don't know what it is. It's all a bit Greek to me. And perhaps therein lies the clue. Because when we talk about Western philosophy, we can't help remembering the Greeks. And of course, the Greeks gave us many things, including the Olympics. And we may not recognize this image of the ancient Olympics, but we would definitely recognize the modern counterpart. And so what about Greek philosophy? Socrates is one of the founders of Western philosophy. And Socrates was interested in the inner world, and he and others that followed have come up with many things that we may not necessarily associate with the Greeks or with philosophy. One of the students of Socrates was Plato, and one of the famous passages in all of Plato's works occurs in the middle of the Meno. Meno asks Socrates if he can prove the truth of his strange claim that all learning is recollection, a claim that Socrates connects to the idea of reincarnation. Socrates responds by calling over an enslaved boy, and after establishing that he has no mathematical training, gives him a geometry problem. The boy is asked how to double the area of a square. His confident first answer is that you achieve this by doubling the length of the sides. Socrates shows him that this in fact creates a square 4 times larger than the original. Boy then suggests extending the sides by half their length. Socrates points out that this will turn a 2 by 2 square, area 4, into a 3 by 3 square, which has an area of 9. At this point, the boy gives up and declares himself at a loss. Socrates then guides him by means of a simple step-by-step questions to the correct answer, which is to use the diagonal of the original square as the base for the new square. So here there's a aspect of innate knowledge which is presented in the Meno, and more about this in a later slide. One of Plato's students was Aristotle, and Aristotle was the first person to discuss the concept of common sense. And common sense is the ability with which animals, including humans, process sense perceptions, memories, and imaginations in order to reach many types of basic judgments. Only humans have real reasoned thinking, which takes them beyond their common sense. One other aspect of Aristotle is he observed 5 elements as earth, wind, fire, water, and ether. And Aristotle's 5 elements exactly corresponds to the Indian Panchabhutangal. Aristotle's writing cover many subjects, including physics, biology, zoology, metaphysics, logic, ethics, aesthetics, poetry, theatre, music, rhetoric, psychology, linguistics, economics, politics, meteorology, geology, and government. And his works contain the earliest known formal study of logic. So this brings us nicely to that topic. What is the significance of Western logic in philosophy? Aristotle came up with laws of logical thought, and these laws are still used by us today in the form of Boolean algebra. And that second law is very interesting, because even if you cannot say definitely what something is, at least you can say with confidence what it is not. And perhaps as a result of elimination, arrive at a truth by discounting many things. And Aristotle naturally leads us into the topic of axioms. So what are axioms and why are they important in philosophy? An axiom is a postulate or an assumption that a statement that is taken to be true to serve as a premise or starting point for further reasoning and arguments. And it comes from the Greek word axioma, that which is thought worthy or fit, or that which commends itself as evident. In classic philosophy, it is a statement that is so evident, so well established, that it is accepted without controversy or question. And an axiom in modern logic is a premise or starting point for reasoning. So with this, we can move on to what this presentation is about. How can a priori and a posteriori methods be used to arrive at certitude? And I had to do some more looking up because there's some key words here: a priori, a posteriori, and certitude. And I started off wondering whether there are any clues within the words themselves. And I think the clue in a priori is prior, and prior means before. And the clue in a posteriori is post, and post means after. But before and after what? A priori and a posteriori are Latin words, and they describe what comes before and after experience. Interestingly, the word experience is something that we'll have a look at a little bit later on as well. And that final word, certitude, that's a lot more familiar. It means certainty or absolute certainty. So the question for this paper seems to be, how do we use methods that both before and after experience arrive at certainty? We are far more familiar with the a posteriori method because we have 5 senses with which to observe the world. So for example, nature is so full of wonder and the metaphoric potential is mind-blowing. From a landlocked, legged, leaf-eating grub to a beautiful, symmetrically appealing, flight-gifted, peaceful butterfly. That is how we can observe the beautiful natural world. And that ability to observe, coupled with deep pondering, has led to the great discoveries. And these discoveries are termed knowledge, and we are taught this at school in the science classes. And I remember conducting an experiment in the science lab, following a method, analyzing the results, and coming up with a conclusion based on those results. And the emphasis being on the reproducibility of the experiment and obtaining independent, repeatable results to validate the hypothesis. This very much fits with the a posteriori method, but of course it is all set into motion with an idea. In order to focus the brain, we need a problem to solve. And how does observation lead to solution? Well, that is the mystery. I can readily recall Archimedes' principle that I learned at school, but when I repeat it parrot fashion, I don't have the sheer joy that it brought to Archimedes in his eureka moment. And this aspect cannot be taught, and is something that only a few people possess. And those people who possess this mysterious ability are far and few between, but we soon learn about them and we admire them because they are so remarkable. A hallmark of Albert Einstein was his use of thought experiments. In his youth, he mentally chased beams of light. And for special relativity, he employed moving trains and flashes of lightning to explain his most penetrating insights. For general relativity, he considered a person falling off a roof, accelerating elevators, blind beetles crawling on curved surfaces. Einstein considered two particles briefly interacting and then flying apart, so their states are correlated, anticipating the phenomenon known as quantum entanglement. This is the realm of the a priori. When such people discover these profound things, they have no doubt that they have come across the solution. And it takes empirical scientists a very long time to prove their theories. This is the meeting point of the a priori with the a posteriori. So back to this slide on Plato's Meno. The innate knowledge presented in the Meno shows that we know some things a priori, i.e. prior to experience. Mathematics in particular is thought to exemplify this sort of knowledge. We don't arrive at theorems in geometry or arithmetic by conducting empirical research. We establish truths of this sort simply by reasoning. Socrates may prove his theorem using a diagram drawn with a stick in the dirt, but we understand immediately that the theorem is necessarily and universally true. It applies to all squares regardless of how big they are, what they are made of, when they exist, or where they exist. It is true that the boy does not really discover how to double the area of the square himself. Socrates guides him to the answer with leading questions. The boy would probably not have arrived at the answer by himself, but this objection misses the deeper point of the demonstration. The boy is not simply learning a formula that he then repeats without real understanding, the way most of us are doing when we say something like E equals mc squared. When he agrees that a certain proposition is true or an inference is valid, he does so because he grasps the truth of the matter for himself. In principle, he could discover the theorem in question and many others just by thinking very hard, and so could we all. Aristotle used an expression, the eye of the soul. That eye can look into the world of nobles, and we're very familiar with that. But that same eye can look introspectively within. Isn't that what that thought experiment is? When the eye of the soul is directed inward, it conducts auto-experimentation by comparing common human experience of the a priori order. Nataraja Guru refers to the a posteriori as the noble or jnanam and the a priori as the knowledge jnanam. When these come together, the whole range of knowledge comes under one science. That becomes the science of sciences, the science of the absolute, or Brahma Vidya, as it is called in India. Experience suggests something is happening externally to our physical being. That may well be the case, but where does the value of the experience register? That perception is within ourselves, and that allows two persons to have their own understanding of something that is happening outside themselves, and that perception may or may not match. Guru Nitya coined the word imperience for that experience that we each perceive. While researching this presentation, it occurred to me that when Guru deeply pondered the issues in Kerala, Guru found the answers, and when he re-entered society, he knew exactly what to do. He had certitude. The inspiration for a lot of material in this presentation has come from these books, and these books have provided an education beyond what I learned at school. We become very specialized in our chosen subject areas, and after school, we rarely consider looking deeply into other subjects. So these books have stirred not just an interest in Western and Eastern philosophy, but have opened up the world of the science of the sciences. So I am forever indebted to the Guru and Guru's vision to send Nataraja Guru to the West. Nataraja Guru's engagement with Western philosophy and capturing his thoughts in the articles that became the books that we have available today has opened up a whole new world that I did not know was available. And these webinars have provided an opportunity with which to take a deep dive and further explore these wondrous worlds. And that is such a joy. So thank you, dear Narayana Gurukula. I'm going to end with the thoughts of Guru Nitya Chaitanya Yadi from his commentary on experiencing the Ishavasya Upanishad, Mantra 4. Guru says, mind is supposed to be the fastest moving phenomenon which man knows. What characterizes the mind is the doubt it formulates, the question it frames, and its curiosity to go into even the most remote corners to discover the hidden truth. The counterpart of doubt is certitude. Of a question is its answer. Of curiosity is the exposition of truth. Of search is the declaration of what is sought. These constitute what we call knowledge. What is characteristic of the self is the knowledge of truth that resolves all doubts and answers all questions. The one self, whose presence is everywhere, is already waiting in patience to bless the seeker with the wisdom he or she seeks. This is the most beautiful way in which we are introduced to the self by the sage.